Welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Hey, welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, the podcast where we unpack the financial, operational, and leadership decisions behind successful law firms. I'm your host, John Scott, with Anders Virtual CFO Services. We help law firms owners build clarity, control, and confidence as they grow. Today, I am thrilled to have a very dynamic person, Paul Faust. He is an entrepreneur, an actor, and a true connector in the personal injury legal space. Paul is the president and co-founder of RingBoost, a premier call tracking and intake intelligence platform built specifically for personal injury law firms. Paul helps firms understand not just where their calls come from, but how they convert and how to turn conversation and clients into ROI. Paul, welcome to Judicial Dollars and Cents.
How you doing, John? I really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to chat with you and see where this goes.
You know, I usually start out trying to get people's origin story. And I really want to dig into your origin story. And I love the storytelling, the acting part of this, because, you know, there are some great storytellers out there. And I don't know if you're familiar with a Southern comedian. He was born in the 20s, died in 98, Jerry Clower. And he can take a story that could be 3 minutes and stretch it into 15 minutes and meander and tie everything back. And it's just another guy is like Zig Ziglar. And so tell us your origin story and tell me how you got to where you are.
Oh, geez. I think that I was always, I think when I was younger, so I'm 56 years old, I was always sort of back then the class clown, the couldn't sit still kid. You know, nowadays we label everybody with ADD or et cetera. When I was younger, he was just a class clown. He couldn't pay attention. He was this. No, the reality was I was learning differently. My brain couldn't focus sitting in a classroom. I just couldn't sit still, but nobody understood it back then. And either did I. So, I was always, his grade should be higher. He's kind of smart, but he's this. So I just always kind of marched to my own drummer. So, there was groups in high school, as you know, that you have the jocks and you have the nerds and you have the this and you have that. And I was sort of just friends with everybody because I didn't find I fit into a group, nor did I want to. I didn't kind of play by that rule book that you're supposed to be in this group. You're supposed to be friends with this people. So I was just friends with everybody. I was both an athlete. I was in the theater program, which didn't always jive back then. And so I've just always kind of marched to my own drummer. And it wasn't until later in life that I understood that my brain operated differently. And it wasn't a hindrance. It was actually a superpower.
I completely agree with you. And I think ADD is a gift that we try and mask with medicine. When you go through the process of learning how you learn, you can deal with chaos in a way that other folks that don't have ADD, they just can't handle it. They need certain things in a rigid way where your whole life has been chaos in your mind. And I completely agree with you on that front.
Yeah, I didn't understand it because I don't think we understood it. And I'm understanding it, by the way, more and more every day, my neurodivergent brain, how it works, how it operates, why I feel the way I do, why certain tasks don't interest me, and why I kind of have written my own book. We have this book that's written for us that you're supposed to do this, and you go to high school, and then you go to college, and then you get a job, and then you have a family and 2.2 kids and a house and a picket fence, and then you go to work miserably, maybe 5 days a week, and then hopefully you enjoy a little bit of a weekend, and then maybe you retire. And I'm like, that is the stupidest book I've ever read. I don't want to do that book. I want to do my own book. And while everyone said, well, that's not how you do things, I always said, why? Well, why not? Why do I have to do it that way? I want to do it my way. And, I'm solving for happy, not for some book that was written by someone else of how I'm supposed to do things. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I love that. Hey, let's talk about RingBoost and how you help PI firms convert leads, get more leads. Tell me about the process of RingBoost.
Okay, so what's really unique about RingBoost is while our core business is memorable phone numbers, the real core of our business, what we really sell is voice communication, connecting human beings through voice. And I think that is the most important tool out there, especially in an increasing digital age. What we are finding with the digital age of websites and social media and Instagram and TikTok, and all this stuff, is that there's a democratizing of information, the way sites look, the way communication is. But the one thing that you can never replicate is me. You can't replicate you. And so the power of human connection through actual voice communication is really what we sell. And we'll tell lawyers, look, you could do all this stuff, SEO and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, nobody is you. And I've asked lawyers in rooms of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lawyers, okay, you have one choice and one choice only. A potential client texts you, goes to your website, goes to your Instagram page, or gets you on the phone. You have one choice. What would you want? And 100% of them want them on the phone. Why? Because when you get them on the phone, you can empathize, you can convince them that you're the right attorney for them, and you can get that case signed up. And yet I see so many firms spend all their dollars trying to drive people to digital assets, to social media accounts, to this. So, and by the way, a big fan of social media and digital marketing, but why are we forgetting the uniqueness of human connection and putting people together on a phone, voice, intonation, emotion, immediacy? And that's really what we offer. The tool happens to be phone numbers, but really what it's about is driving human connection.
Well, and it really starts at the front desk, or that first interaction that the client has with the firm. And, you walk into a place, and I guess it doesn't happen as much now as you call or send an email or a text, but you walk into the place, if the receptionist is engaging and cares about you and looks you in the eye, you feel good about it. And I think you have to build a culture where that works throughout the entire firm. So talk about the data that you look at to judge how a firm is doing in those areas.
Well, look, whether I'm not going to say we look at that data. There are lots of unbelievable vendors out there that I work with that will actually score phone calls. There's some that do it. There's a great one that just started out there called Speed AI, I believe. They actually take phone calls, listen to them, find out empathy scores, where a call agent missed. Like, hey, this person said this. Why didn't you go into this? So right now with AI, there's so much data out there that can analyze in real time and after the call what we call missed opportunities. I've told most law firms that I talk to and work with that if you got not one more lead, if you only get 30 leads a month or 100 leads a month, if you didn't get one more lead ever, you can grow your law firm, because there's so much falling through the bottom. Our friend Harlan Schillinger, big in the business, says you only know what you know, or you don't know what you don't know. There is so much good quality cases falling through because someone didn't follow up. Someone didn't understand empathy. Somebody missed an opportunity. And that first line of defense is that initial call, or it could be, in this case, an initial email, an initial text, an initial social media. But I don't care how good you are as a lawyer. We could all write that we've had $1 million settlements and we went to Harvard and I'm the PI lawyer of the month. It doesn't matter if your intake person isn't handling the call right, isn't capturing that client the right way. If they move that data down the line to maybe a paralegal or someone else, that next person down the line only knows what they were told. They weren't part of the original conversation. So if things are left out that get passed up the line, the next person only knows so much. So this is so critical. And if lawyers don't solve this first, forget trying to get more marketing, forget coming to me for a phone number or an SEO company or anything, forget all that. We have a saying in the martial arts school that I train at: a tree with a strong root doesn't fear the storm. If you're building your firm on balsa wood without these strong foundations, you're going to get blown over. But if you build great intake, great process, great communication, you can build on top of that anything you want, and you could adjust as the market changes, which it is doing right now.
There's a couple things there I want to unpack. One is AI, and I'll get back to that. But I just met with a firm. It's our next new client, and we do virtual CFO services for law firms. They have an intake form that at the end of the form was diverting clients to other firms. It was saying you don't qualify as us. And they couldn't figure out what was going on because the new client spigot just completely turned off. And they started getting thank yous from these other firms. Thank you for the referral. And then they figured out that the person who set up the intake form, basically the answer was, you don't qualify as a client for us. It was amazing. Thank God they discovered it, but it's really put them in a financial hurt. But AI, I want to unpack that a little bit. Firms that embrace AI, you have two camps of lawyers. One thinks it's going to be the end of their profession, and the other is embracing it, and it's replacing repeatable, mundane things to free up time to do higher level work. It's not to work more, but if we can set processes and use AI in the right way, it's going to be like going from a spreadsheet on paper to creating amortization schedules with, I'm going to date myself here, VisiCalc and Lotus 123, which is now Excel. And, I just think embracing it is the right way to go, and it's going to help smaller firms compete with the bigger firms in the world.
I agree with you. I have 2 points to make on it. Yes, we must embrace it, but I have this expression, it's not mine. Slow down, you'll go faster. If you go to a conference, you will run into 15 really good quality AI companies with really good salespeople. And if you sit through their sales pitch, you're going to want to sign up. Slow down. You will go faster. Yes, we all need AI in our practice. I'm not a lawyer. Lawyers need AI in their practice, but don't just race to sign up for the first thing you see because the salesman was really good, because there's other components that you need to think about. First of all, I think we're in basically the infancy of AI, even though legal is one of the biggest areas and biggest explosions. It's still learning. But also, you could race and sign up for this AI. Does it tie into your intake? Does it tie into your SEO? Does it tie? So slow down. You will go faster. And then here's a great expression. I got this one from Gary Vaynerchuk. There's the lawyers out there that say, well, I don't care. I don't like it. I don't like it. John, or nobody cares what you think. Okay. Technology doesn't care if you don't like it. Okay. It is going to do its thing. It's going to keep growing. So you either have to pay attention, get on board, or get roll. Nobody cares if you don't like it. Seriously. Like, unless you say, you know what, I'm going to do things my way. I'm only going to do it old school. Okay. You could run a successful business in your local market, but and even now, especially, and this plays into what you do and why it's so important what you do, with the big money coming into the space, hedge funds, private equity, more and more lawyers are getting pumped out of law schools, especially in the PI space. We're seeing less catastrophic accidents because of technology and vehicles. So margins are getting squeezed. So how do we find margin? Well, an AI agent, there's one company I work with called Nito. One AI agent can handle 20 simultaneous calls in 34 languages. It doesn't get sick. It doesn't go on maternity leave. It doesn't have a bad day. It didn't go out on a Friday night. It can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so if I can employ those tools, I've grabbed some margin back. And now my staff and myself as a lawyer can focus on getting that case to the highest value, the most money both for the firm and the client, and not be bleeding out on things that automation can handle for us. So
I love the all-in slow approach, because you're right. We are in the infancy stages of AI, and things are moving so fast. So what might work today and be a great solution might be outdated in 3 months, and you might have to pivot and jump to the next new thing. But I like the conservative approach, but as long as you're all in and use it the right way to do this for the right things, to get better cases, to have fewer, people do things that are easy, right? People want to do things that are beneath their pay grade because they're comfortable with it. We have to push people out of their comfort zone and up to doing higher level work.
Yeah, look, my good friend Mike Morse, who runs one of the largest law firms in Michigan, Mike Morse, and he also runs Fireproof Coaching. I think he was the first, and this, I mean, you're talking about a firm that does hundreds of millions in revenue a year. I think he was the first lawyer to hire a director of AI, because he's my age as a lawyer. He's going to conference. All these tech kids are hitting him with stuff, and he loves it all, and he wants to buy from everybody. But what does he know? So he hired a director of AI, and her responsibility is he throws everything to her. Vet this company, vet this. Does it tie in? How does it work? Okay, this one might be a little bit better, but this one works with our case management software better. So he actually brought on a full C-level position, like you have your CFO, your COO, your CMO. She is a full director of AI, and her job is to vet companies and implement for the firm. And I think more firms need to look at that, either a full-time employee or an outsource, just like they're outsourcing their CFO work, because they don't teach you this in law school. They don't teach you this in any school. And, it used to be we'd go to conferences and most of the people at the booths would look like you and I. Now, most of the people at the booths are 22 years old. They're these tech geniuses, and they're trying to talk to lawyers about how to run practice and how to be more efficient. And there's a disconnect in age and experience and even the way they speak. But the lawyers get so excited that they want to just jump on board. And I think that could be a fatal mistake. So, find someone that really understands every part of AI, make them an integral part of your firm, or outsource to someone who could do it part-time. And, look, I've seen a lot of firms that have a lot of Ferrari pieces, but the firm runs like a Honda. Because just because you have great pieces, if they don't communicate right, it breaks.
Yeah.
So make sure that, we're integrating and we're finding the resources that work together. And look, the reality is with AI, there could be two kids in a basement that are going to show up at National Trial Lawyers, which is in 2.5 weeks, that have the greatest AI solution for something that we don't know about. And if you just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars re-implementing for this one, what about this one? So just slow down, you'll go faster.
It is an investment, and I think hiring someone or forming a committee and letting them spend time to focus on what's the right path for AI is the right way to go. Hey, I want to change gears a little bit. You've seen many firms behind the scene. What separates firms that clearly get it to firms that are stuck and are unable to grow? What do you tell that firm?
There's one common denominator for almost every single firm that I've seen that's successful. And by the way, let me be very clear. Success is what you define it as. There are some lawyers who are very happy making a couple $100,000 a year, $300,000 a year. They set their own hours. They have no desire to be the Mike Morse of the world or the top, whatever. That's okay. The number one common theme of every successful firm that I have seen is a coaching program or a mastermind program. Every single one. There are 2 or 3, 4 in the market that I think are great. You have your Fireproof, Accelerator, the Mickey Love and Chad Dudley Rub, Ken Hardison's Pilma, Tim McKee at Vista. There are, Craig, there are groups out there having a coach and a mastermind program for a couple reasons. First of all, the coaching, great. And then the mastermind, you're in a group of other lawyers in your revenue world who have all working on the same problems and have probably solved half the mistakes you've had. I have seen very, very, very few firms successful without that. And I've seen some of the top firms in this country, the biggest names that you think they know everything, they're in coaching programs. They're in mastermind programs. It is the number one, bar none. Get a coach, get in a mastermind program. It will change your firm, period, full stop.
I completely agree there. And firms that are open to coaching are also open to outsourcing other things that aren't in their wheelhouse. I mean, attorneys did not go, for the most part, to law school with an undergraduate background in accounting or finance. And many firms discount their finance function, and they just think, and it's not just limited to attorneys. I mean, there are accountants in the world that keep their head down and think if they do the work that's in front of them, everything will be great. But in reality, you have to pay attention to data. You have to figure out, hey, when I swing the hammer, if I hit the nail straight on the head, I just have to keep swinging the hammer. So by paying attention to data, figure out what works and what doesn't work, you can pull different levers. We focus on profit-focused accounting, which is really 4 areas. It's cash, production, financials, and pipeline. And we look at the financial and non-financial drivers in those areas and then help firms see into the future and say, where do you want to go? And based on where you want to go, here's what has to happen. And then we don't just look at it once a month or once a year, rather. We pull it out every month and say, are we on that trend line? How do we meet or exceed that goal? And
Yep.
without doing that, you can't get to where you want to go. And so folks that are in coaching programs are open to that sort of advice.
It's great that you say that, because I brought up my dear friend Mike Morse many times. But if you listen to Mike and his fireproof coaching, the first thing he tells you is he talks about his John Knockhazel. Mike is a lawyer. Okay, he's an idea guy. He's a big idea guy. He's got John Knockhazel, who is COO, but is also CFO, and nothing happens without John. And I can't tell you, so it's Mike Morse and John Knockhazel. They did the Fireproof book together. How many firms ask me and tell me, I need my Knockhazel? I need my Knockhazel. Why? Because they're all a Mike Morse. They're all a lawyer. They all have great ideas, but you need Mike's the visionary. John knows the numbers and the data. And Mike always talks about, when he talks to conferences, John tells them basically on January 1st exactly how much money Mike is going to make at the end of the year. On January 1 of this year, so we just passed it a week ago, John will tell Mike, this is how much you're going to make this year, because he understands the numbers. He understands the cost. He understands that there are ebbs and flows of when the money comes in. So Mike doesn't stress about losing a big case or if something slows down this week. He understands the numbers, the math, the finances, so he can make decisions. He's not panicked making decisions on the last second, because John has mapped things out. They understand their data. They understand where the money's going. They understand where certain lawyers are not hitting their numbers because they have what they call their jumbotron. And that's what you do, is when a firm understands their data and their quote jumbotron, where all the money is, where all the leads, they don't stress about things. They can make micro decisions because you have 10 lawyers. This one's under numbers. Let's go look at why. Let's go look at how we change that. And so it's critically important. I don't care how good a lawyer you are. I mean, I do. I'm not saying I don't care, but lots of people can say that. But are you getting the right cases? Are you maximizing the value? My friend Chad Dudley and Mickey Love at Accelerator, they talk about, are you getting the most out of your cases? They'll walk into a firm and say, hey, look at all these cases. You left a ton of money on the table because you don't understand the numbers.
Or are you picking the right cases?
You're picking the right cases. Are you maximizing their value? And that's where this is stuff they don't teach you in law school. So, right. And look, whether we like it or not, there's hundreds of millions, if not more, coming in from outside capital, hedge fund capital, VC capital. That capital really understands numbers. And the firms that they back, either directly or through MSOs, they're going to really understand the numbers. And so you better do it as well.
Yeah, we're working with a firm right now that is trying to gobble up other firms. They're convinced, and I agree with them, that at some point the prohibition against non-attorney ownership will be nationwide, and they'll be able to have a bigger firm, and they're creating an MSO with private equity money. And I think he's a little bit on the front end, but he's in a good spot rolling this up now.
He's in a great spot. And what you said is really important. There's hedge funds, and then there's guys like your client looking to roll up firms, right? So if you're a firm, whether you're thinking about an exit or not, because you might not have a choice, you better really get your numbers dialed in. If you want to be a takeover candidate, if you want to sell your firm, if you want to be acquired, or if you don't, but you might have to down the road, when they come in to look at you, you better know your numbers cold. You better know what your cost of acquisition is, what your margins are, how much you make, time on desk, et cetera, because these firms these big law firms that are taking over or funds are going to need to know these numbers. So that's why it's important that if you don't have your own CFO, if you don't have your fund, get somebody in there that I don't care how good the firm is. If I walked in there and you can't show this data, they're going to be like, all right, get your data in order and then we'll come back. And by then it might be too late. So you might really want to pull back a little bit, either do it yourself if you have someone. If not, you can bring in a CFO, virtual CFO or part-time CFO. Really get your numbers in order, because that's what everybody's going to look at. They're not just going to look at your branding and your goodwill.
Well, my God, that is so true, because if your books are a mess, nobody's going to want to touch that. But if they're spick and span and everything's, you've got a handle on everything and books are clean, they're going to pay a premium for that. And so you got to have the financial house in order. And being a good lawyer is just a given. We expect that you're really good at your craft, but allowing other folks to help you get the data in great shape is going to help you exit. And you should be thinking about exit whenever you start any business from the start, whether it's an internal sale to the younger partners that are coming up or a bigger sale to private equity. You should be always thinking about that and cleaning things up as you go.
And don't fudge your numbers. Don't fudge your numbers,
Right.
because the guys coming in to look at it will know. It's okay if the average, I'm making this up because I'm not a CFO, if your margins are 20% and they're supposed to be 27%, a good CFO and team can come in and say, okay, you're operating solid at 20%, but we know if we just fix this, we'll get to the right numbers. But your numbers are clean, your data's right, your team's in place, everything's good. We see where you're falling and where that 7% is being lost. We could fix that. But if you try and fudge it to hit what you think they want, they're going to see right through it.
Well, and they've seen hundreds of firms, so they're going to find where you tried to hide that. And you're right. As you grow, if you're a sole practitioner, you can make 50, 60% because your overhead's just not there. But as you grow into a bigger organization and overhead grows, you're going to make a lesser percentage, but of a much bigger number. So the trade-off is the juice is worth the squeeze. Hey, you're known as a connector. Somebody builds deep relationships within the legal space. How important are those relationships to growing a business in your firm compared to systems and strategy?
Wow. Look, I think they're both important, but my position personally is personal relationships are more important. And I'll tell you why I say that. Because systems and strategy have changed over the years. Meaning we have a different accounting system, we have a different platform, a different software, a different case management, a different this, a different that. What has not changed is my relationship with my clients, a trusted relationship, a spot where you can call, where we have each other's best interests in mind. So while I think both are important, one thing that's not going to change is my relationship with my lawyer clients and my friends. Technology will change, the industry will change, it'll ebb and flow, and private equity, not private equity, mass tort, single event, blah blah blah, all that can change. But human connection, the reason that I consult for some other companies now in the space, why? Not because I know every product and I'm the smartest guy in the room. It's because I have the deepest relationships and I've spent 20 years cultivating trust. I'm not looking to make a quick buck. I truly want my firms to grow. Sometimes that's with things I could help with. Sometimes it's with things that you could help with. So I believe that relationship building, look, all things being equal, people do business with people they like. All things being unequal, people still do business with people they like. You talked about that early on about firms who were losing clients because their intake form was wrong. Well, if I'm taking your intake and I'm not the firm for you, and I could do two things. I could say, John, we don't do that. Goodbye. Click. Or John, we're probably not the best firm for you. But you know what, John? I have a couple people that I know in the industry that I think would be great for you. Let me reach out to them. Let me connect you with them. So I've done a couple things. I've taken care of you, who's ultimately the client, and I've taken care of my referral source. Because while I might not be the right lawyer for John right now, what if John's friend gets in a car accident tomorrow? Will John think to call Paul, the guy who helped him out with connecting him with the right lawyer? Or will John say, that guy hung up on me and told me it wasn't my case? So again, that's about human connection. It's about connecting it. We talk about early on that you have to build your brand to own the client before the point of impact, before the accident. If you're trying to market to someone the day they've been in a car accident, you're late. I want to own, I'm 56 years old, knock on wood, I've never been in a car accident, never need a lawyer. But I can tell you if I get in one, who I'm calling right now, and it's not going to be because I get home or I'm laying in the hospital bed and I see a commercial. I've already been branded to the right people because they've owned their community. And that's critically important because somebody can come in the market tomorrow with more marketing dollars. But if you build your relationships and who you are, you're okay.
I love your focus on human connection, and it bleeds over into your personal life too. Just having those human connections. And that's one thing with AI that I think will be important. If we can free up X% of our time, let's say it's 20% of our time, by getting the mundane task off our plate, what do we do with that 20% of the time? I'm not suggesting that we should work more. We should spend time at home with our neighbors, our family, our friends, and develop the things that we've kind of gotten away from. Hey, I want to shift gears before we wrap up here. And I know you're an actor. You've had some. You've had some credits, right?
Yeah.
Were you on The Office?
Yes, I did an episode of The Office, playing myself, which was fun.
What was your line in The Office episode that you were in?
My big line that everyone knows is could have done this over email. We had a meeting in a conference room, and at the end of the meeting, I was like, we could have done this over email. Like there was no reason. So that became the line. And originally, it's funny, it wasn't my line originally. It was originally supposed to be Bob Vance's, and then they gave it to me, and it just worked. And that became the line that people kind of recognize.
You know, probably because I didn't know you before this, I don't remember that episode, but I'm going to go back and watch it. I've seen most of the episodes. Was Jenna Fisher in that episode?
No, my episode was in the scene I was in. This was the chair model episode. They were trying to get Michael Scott a date, but my episode was based around parking spaces. So it was Ed Helm, Brian Baumgartner. We met in a conference room. They called a meeting of the 5 families. But more than the fact that I was on The Office, which was super cool. And now I'm about to work on a new pilot for a TV show called Alley Boy. I shot another pilot for a TV show called Life on Bourbon. I have a movie coming out soon called Patch that I was in, and I was also executive producer. It has nothing to do with being an actor. What it has to do with is, and this came from my coach Jesse Itzler. He has a company called Build Your Life Resume and Big Ass Calendar Club. Is why do you just have to be a lawyer? Like people say, what do you do? I'm a lawyer. Like what do you do? I'm a whatever I want to. I'm not trying to act to be a famous actor. I'm doing it because I love it. So why can't I be a business guy that owns RingBoost.com, that I also make movies? I also consult for Claim Angel that does pre-settlement funding. They built the platform. I also help Mike out with Fireproof. I also was a volunteer firefighter. Don't read the book that says you have to do one thing Monday to Friday. Then Friday night you get to bed. You got Saturday to be excited. Sunday you might be a little tired. And then you get ready for Monday again. My license plate on my car is BYLR. Build your life resume. I don't care about the $10 million case you did this year. Tell me where you've traveled, what books you've read, what about your kids, what charities have you done, what are your hobbies? Build your life resume. And that's why I act and now I'm making movies, because I love it. It's just another part of my life. We only get one go around. Like the bus is moving. I don't know when it's going to end, but I'm not waiting for later to do things.
But you're going to get your money's worth. I love it.
Yes.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for your time today. Before we wrap, if listeners want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Look, I will. You can go to my website at ringboost.com. You can email me, Paul at ringboost.com. You can call me at 914-200-0013. 13 is my lucky number. You can Instagram me at Cool Guy Paul Faust. You could send smoke signals, get a carrier pigeon. I don't care. And by the way, I've said this to every lawyer I've ever met. You're a lawyer. Write a contract that says you will never do business with me. I will sign it. Call me at 4 a.m. on Sunday and see if I help you. I am a life of abundance person. A rising tide lifts all boats. Let's grow the industry together. Let's do good. And let's keep moving the ball forward. So I'm happy to talk to anybody about anything, give you guidance, advice, help, whatever it is. Please reach out.
All right. That's awesome. Hey, and thank you all for listening. If you found this episode helpful, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. Until next time, I'm John Scott with Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.